tell my community and those families who are waiting, this will be a rough week. Primary search continues.
First off,
we remain hopeful. Every foot,
my prayers
every mile, every bend of the river.
and my deepest
Our work
condolences
continues. We need to know that
to those
we have been blessed
who have
with
lost
help
loved ones
as a community, from
in
the state,
this
and the
tragedy in Texas,
We
man.
have trained experts who are helping in this effort. If you want to volunteer,
July 4th
it
weekend,
is
this goes on,
important that you
man.
contact Kerrville
I
Salvation
can't
Army
even
and
fathom it,
register.
but
Dalton gave that number, but I'm going to give it again. 830
I'm capturing this
465 4797.
because I want to
We
hear
need focused and coordinated,
how this is going to be
not random people just showing up and
addressed,
doing what they do. We need to work together.
because there are a lot of
As Dalton said,
uh,
donations have been flowing in from around the world to the Community
discontent
Foundation. Again, that
with the way
website is
that
communityfoundation.net.
this information was disseminated about the weather and this potential of this weather here in Texas. I live in Central Texas,
They're accurate. We take a lot of time to make sure we send
and
out
I had no
information
idea
not only to residents.
that this type of weather was coming. And there are issues with
I've said this 100 times, and I will say it again.
uh,
We need your prayers. We need your prayers.
cutbacks at the National Weather
And
Service.
now, Senator Ted Cruz.
There are issues with the notification systems, all of these things. And this is who I want to hear, what he has to say.
Pain, the shock of what has transpired. these
Now
last
watch how he
days
politicizes this.
has broken
Watch how he
our
spins it away from
As of yesterday,
the responsibility that I just talked
total was
about
82, and those numbers are continuing
to turn it into something successful because of what Trump did. Watch.
Lost at Camp Mystic.
Bet money.
It's every parent's nightmare. Every mom and dad. Last week, we were picking up our daughter from camp here in Hunt. Our girls have gone to camp here for a decade. The Hill Country is an incredible part of Texas, part of the country. The natural beauty here is incredible. The camps that have raised generations of little girls and little boys and instilled character and love and faith are extraordinary institutions. And I'll tell you, the pain in our state, and it's every part of the state. You've got Texans from all over the state who were here celebrating the 4th of July.
He's fixing to go into
A week
something
ago, this was a time of great celebration. You're dropping your little girl off at
political.
camp,
There you go.
your little boy off at
Tell
camp.
the story.
You're celebrating Independence Day.
Why do you want them to relive
Your
that?
child's gonna be swimming, and canoes, and horseback riding, and doing archery, and making lifetime friends. And then suddenly it turns to tragedy.
This is a cornball.
For the last several days, I've spoken to multiple parents,
I cannot believe
scared out of their mind. Do
He
you
is
know
a
anything?
sinner.
Where is my daughter? There's still 10
from my
girls
state.
and one counselor from Camp Mystic that are unaccounted for. And the pain and agony of not knowing your child's whereabouts, it's the worst thing imaginable.
Yeah, state the obvious, motherfucker. Whatever.
But I want to say, in the face of all of this,
Here's the
it's
spin.
simultaneously inspiring.
Here's the spin.
Every time there's a tragedy, every time there's a natural disaster in Texas, Texans come together.
See, now he's
Texas is
comfortable
a
now.
big
He's
state.
in his
We have
flow.
31 million people, and we have hurricanes, we have tornadoes, we have wildfires. Tragedies hit this state, natural disasters hit this state, and without fail, 100 out of 100 times when that happens, we see Texans coming together, helping each other, engaging in acts of heroism. There have been over 850 high water rescues since this flooding began.
Yeah. Remember the
850.
bombing?
You look at
Iran.
extraordinary stories of Eagle Scouts pulling campers out of harm's way. I was just
How they
hearing
went
a
away
story
from
of
the
one
actual
counselor
issue
whose head was right at the water, holding up 2 mattresses
to the hero.
with campers on those
Right.
mattresses. That kind of courage, that kind
And
of
they deserve it.
And then they're the first responders.
But that shouldn't be where we're focused on right now.
The local first responders, I want to thank every one of the first responders.
We should be
at the local
focused on
level,
what
at the city
happened.
level, at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. In the first few hours of this flood,
Because if they were speaking on if this was Biden or Obama or Hillary or Kamala, anybody other than a Republican, they will be up here right now,
and then I called President Trump.
up in arms. Here you go.
I called President Trump.
President Trump, what did he do?
It was still early in what was transpiring.
His leadership.
And I wanted him to know, I said, Mr. President, everything we're hearing right now, this appears to be bad, really bad.
This happened under
There
you
may be a
and
very
Greg Abbott,
significant loss of
Donald
life
Trump.
unfolding right now in Texas. And I will tell you, the president said, Ted, anything Texas needs.
And the
answer
people of
yes.
Texas are going to hold you
Whatever
accountable.
assets you
Okay.
need, whatever resources you need, yes, let us know, and we will provide everything.
Good.
Within hours, we
Glad
had
to hear it.
helicopters, over a dozen helicopters in the air.
Because you will be held accountable.
National Guard, DPS,
As well as you,
Coast Guard,
Senator
doing
Cruz.
search and rescue, reaching down. We've all seen the videos of little girls being pulled up, hoisted out of harm's way. Incredible courage and heroism.
Man.
Search and rescue is the first stage, but the process of coming together and rebuilding.
These are the people who we are dependent on keeping us.
And I will say to all the
Safe.
grieving families, to all of those who've gotten the worst news imaginable, that your little girl, she's gone.
Does he instill confidence?
I will say for many of us, those
Is
are
what he's
friends and
saying
neighbors who
instill
lost children.
confidence?
Got multiple kids who go to school with my girls. The mayor asked for prayers. And I want to say thank you to the millions of Texans, to the millions of
We need
Americans,
prayers, but
to
we
the
need
millions of people
answers.
all over the world right now who are praying
As well.
for Texas and praying for those parents.
And in the
Going
next
through
coming
this grief,
days,
it is going to take
y'all gonna
love,
answer
it is
for it.
going to take friends and family embracing and hugging and holding them while they weep. And it's going to take the church. With every disaster, one of the things we see here in Texas is the church steps up and the church helps and the church feeds and clothes and comforts. This morning I met with a group of chaplains
this church.
who've been going through the incredibly difficult process of talking to mom and
That
dad
includes
after
the
mom and dad who
synagogues,
just lost the
the
most
mosques.
precious person they ever knew. And those chaplains are just trying to love them and show God's love. So I want to say we will come through this. To those in the midst of grief right now, that might seem hard to fathom.
Yeah, see, but you're talking like this is
And I just want to say
a
thank you.
Texas thing. No, this is a thing that happened in Texas to individuals in Texas.
Thank you to the families. Thank you to the Salvation Army. Thank you to everyone who has just reached.
You don't know that these people are going to get through this. You haven't lost a child.
We'll come through this together.
You haven't lost a father, a sister, a brother.
And now we'll take questions.
Senator, you're talking about no kids here, taking your own kids to camp. Was it ever communicated to you that there was a need, that it was a priority to have a warning system so people had a chance to escape?
No.
Well, listen, I think anytime you're dealing with major rivers, there's a risk of flooding, and there's always been a risk of flooding, particularly the Guadalupe River.
So you should know
I
that.
would say, in the wake of every tragedy, there are things that are predictable. One of the things that's predictable is that you see some people engaging in, I think, partisan games.
Here we
and
go.
trying to blame their
Here we go.
opponents for a natural disaster.
That's what you hoes do.
You see that with a hurricane, with a tornado, with a wildfire, with this flooding, where people immediately say, well, the hurricane is Donald Trump's fault. You know, look, I think most normal Americans know that's ridiculous, and I think this is not a time
This is just
for
absurd,
partisan
man.
finger pointing and attacks. Now, after we come through search and rescue, after we come through the process of rebuilding, there will naturally be a period of retrospection.
The question wasn't even about Donald
And
Trump.
say, okay, what exactly transpired? What was the timeline?
So that's called getting ahead of the
What could have
game.
been done differently to prevent this loss of life? And that's a natural process. I think it should not happen in a bitter and partisan sense, but it should happen in a reasonable sense of saying, what lessons can we learn? And I will give an example. You know, Houston's my hometown. If you live on the Gulf Coast, we get hurricanes. That's part of living on the
So
Gulf
nobody
Coast.
in there is
Hurricanes
claiming
there.
you.
And I do think Texas as a whole has learned over time how to deal more effectively with hurricanes. And so you look here, we know the National Weather Service put out an emergency warning just after 1 a.m. and a second emergency warning just after 4 a.m. Now, obviously, most people at 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. are asleep. And so I think we will have a reasonable conversation about, A, are there any ways to have earlier detection? And some of that, the limits of a flash flood, they're very difficult because they can arise so quickly. But everyone would agree in hindsight, if we could go back and do it again, we would evacuate particularly those in the most vulnerable areas. The young
What about
children
the
who have
weather
closest to the
reports?
water, we would remove them and get them to higher ground if we could go back and do it again. Obviously, everyone would. The people in RVs.
I saw no predictions
by the river's edge.
of that amount of water coming through here.
We know in disasters like this, RVs and mobile homes are particularly susceptible, whether a flood or a hurricane or a tornado, they're particularly susceptible to that. And so my hope is, in time, we will learn some lessons to implement to next time, and there will be another flood, there will be another disaster.
It's amazing
But next time there's a flood, I
how
hope we have in place processes to remove especially the
they're
most vulnerable from
so,
harm's way. But I think that's going to
you
be a
know,
process
forgiving
that will take a careful examination of what happened and how can we
when it's on their
how can we
watch.
implement processes better in the future
And
to
so
prevent this
damning.
loss of
I mean, with rage and fire
National Weather Service sent that
when it's
first
not.
flood warning that should have alerted phones at 1:14 in the morning.
Yeah.
We have a federal public database maintained by PBS Warn, that says the first emergency alert wirelessly here in this area to Kerr County was not until after 9 a.m. That was more than 4 hours after the severe flooding had come to this area. Did you know that? Have you seen that? What's your response?
No.
The state had cuts to the NWS in recent months by this administration.
Yeah, get to that.
I don't know the source for what you're saying. All of the public reporting I've seen is that there were two alerts that went out, one just after 1 a.m., one after 4 a.m. You know, I can tell you, I talked about the partisan finger pointing.
Nah,
I think there have been some
ain't no partisan
eager
finger pointing, bro.
to point at the National Weather Service and say cuts there led to a lack of
and these
warning.
families, more than likely, are
Contradicted by
Republicans.
facts, and if you look at the
They ain't
facts,
trying to
in
hear this
particular, number
bullshit.
one, that these warnings went out hours before the flood became a true emergency level. But number two, the National Weather Service here, New Braunfels is where they were headquartered. They had additional manpower. In fact, they had 3 additional people working that night, anticipating that it was going to be a very dangerous weather situation. I also think it's worth noting that the National Weather Service Union, which has been very critical of the DOGE cuts, has publicly said that they don't believe that the reduction in staffing had any impact
You see,
whatsoever
this is
on
spin.
their ability to warn of this.
This is
event.
damage
And
control.
so, look, I think it is reasonable over time to engage in a
Literally.
retrospective and say at every level what could have been done better, because all of us would want to prevent this horrific loss of life. But I think just immediately trying to use it for either side to attack their political opponents, I think that's cynical and not the right approach, particularly at a time when we're dealing with a crisis and we're dealing with grief.
But does this make you question whether there should be cuts of the National Weather Service and FEMA? Have you been supportive of FEMA?
Look, I am very supportive of FEMA. I'm very supportive of the National Weather Service. They both perform essential roles, and I think it is critical. In every
Y'all are gonna
agency,
answer
particularly when you're dealing with
for
public
this.
safety, that we make
Maybe
sure
not
that
today.
critical roles are maintained. That's a longer.
You're not gonna
and
spin your
discussion.
way out
As
of
I
this.
said, everything from the public evidence indicates that was not a contributing factor to what occurred here.
Let's go get Dalton just to talk about that.
He done. He don't wanna get no more.
There were escalating forecasts throughout the day from the National Weather Service.
Yes, Ted
What
Cruz,
did the emergency
Raphael
so the
Cruz,
county and other local
won't even go by his real
information,
name.
starting at 1:15
surprised he ain't changed his name, his spelling to Cruise like Tom.
So overall,
Uncle.
we were preparing for the July 4th, weekend. So we
Yeah, I
had
see
National
it.
Guard on site. We were
Yeah.
basically stood up kind of an incident command post, if you will, to prepare for that event. So most everybody was coming up, looking at weather. We looked at the weather before. When you looked at the National Weather Service, flood map, it spanned all the way from the west side of Texas, with Kirk County kind of being in that upper northeast corner of it. And so everybody, including the National Weather Service, was looking at where is the rain going to hit. You know it's somewhere in here, but with rain, especially when you're dealing with terrain, you got to figure out. Sometimes you don't know until it falls.
But why would you not take that precaution then, knowing that that area is prone to flood?
How's the science going to work? And when you have that north and south fork that we had talked about before, they all converge into one.
Y'all gonna answer for this, man.
A lot of the camps were looking at this just as much as as everybody was. With the rainfall percentages, even the National Weather Service had looked at, and don't quote me on the numbers, but it's anywhere between
July
1 to
4th
7
weekend.
7 inches.
America's
And that's
birthday
significantly
weekend.
over that. And again, when it goes into very congregated areas and how
The
that
same day
watershed shifts
we had
into
the death
to the rivers,
of what's probably going to end up being over 100
Obviously, we've heard
Americans.
stories where campers were getting up. They were up at 3:30 in the morning. They were trying to move to higher
My
ground.
fellow brothers and sisters from Texas.
That's the and the other interesting part.
Little
of the
kids that would never ever grow up to do
UGR
anything other than
well,
the last thing they did on that damn river.
This is the beginning. This is where everything forms when it comes into to the north and south fork. And so.
And you motherfuckers are gonna have to hold these people accountable, man.
Very quickly in a very short amount of time. And so those campers that were able to do that.
This is
it
fucking
worked.
absurd.
There's been the other question. I'll just give this one out. Evacuation. Well, why don't we evacuate? Well,
Fucking
evacuation
absurd.
is a delicate balance. Because if you evacuate too late, you then risk putting buses, or cars or vehicles or campers on roads into low water areas trying to get them out, which then can make it even more challenging because these flash floods happen very quickly as well.
So this was done in 1987, but was there one special evacuation earlier when it was?
They're gonna end this conference, this press conference here real soon.
Was there any discussion to evacuate or activate any emergency plans before it was too late for it to be very dangerous?
So again, just like disasters in Texas everywhere, it's very tough to make those calls because what we also don't want to do is cry wolf. We don't want to make sure that we activate at
Fuck
the right
crying
time.
wolf, bitch. If it's if it's a wolf down in the woods, you ain't got to see that bitch to know it's potential danger.
Right? That's a big straight line distance. That's not even along the river. These areas take a lot of time to get out to. So even when first responders were on the ground at 3:30 in the morning and we had reports, we had first responders that were getting swept away, actually responding to the first areas of rainfall. That's how quick it happened. First responders who have experience, who are Swiftwater qualified, were driving to as soon as the rain started falling, were driving to these areas, and one of them got swept off the road.
But why you didn't get word downstream then?
Between 1 and 4 a.m. for local law enforcement to the camp saying, I know you can't get buses in an hour. Was there anyone telling the camp between 1 and 4 a.m.? You need to get the girls to higher ground at the very least, and they have to walk up there in the rain to me and actually get it.
Yeah, if they downstream,
From local law enforcement.
why not go ahead and get that information up?
That I don't know off the top of my head. What I do know though is there's
Man.
55,000 people in Kirk County. Kirk County is a massive, massive area. From here to those camps is 45 minutes on a good day. And so, obviously one of the big challenges that we have, even when you have cell service, a lot of those areas don't even have cell service. Radio communications towers, radio towers within the hill country becomes very challenging. So there's a lot of areas, especially
lost
when
more
weather
people
comes
here
in, where cellular towers are down,
in this
or
flood
you already have bad service. So there's a lot of factors that play in, a lot of variables in there.
I think most of the major hurricanes that we've had
as we work through this process,
in the past few
everybody has
years,
a lot of questions regarding
with the exception of Katrina.
what's next. And I think all of these things, these are all great questions. And as we continue search and rescue, and as we continue to move to the next step, we
On
definitely
July
will dive
4th
in and
weekend,
look at
man.
all those things, from cell service tower to to radio communications, emergency alerting, any of those things. I think we all really need to take a look at and review, and we're looking forward to doing that.
If this
once we
don't
get the search and rescue
let
stuff.
America know that God is trying to tell you something, with the flood?
We've been praying.
Thank you.
You remember the flood that y'all are so
I've got two questions. One,
held up on with Noah in the Bible?
I know we don't know we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
But do we know
Do you understand
a rough idea on total estimates that we're still missing?
what he's trying to tell you?
And then one other follow-up, this may be for Senator Cruz. A lot of speculation is being made about this being somehow manual with the weather modifications, some training, later technology working with farmland. Do you think any of that, is there going to be any investigations into that? Can you communicate anything on that?
Let me answer your first question. I'm definitely turning that second one over to him. So, on the first question, with missing persons, so obviously we have the knowns, the Camp Mystic kids, which is the numbers coming down as the sheriff has stated, and then we have the unknowns. We don't know what we don't know. We actually have a 5 hotline line. It fluctuates between 3 and 5, but we're working on it. We get calls 24 hours, 7 days a week. We haven't hit the week yet, but we're still taking in calls. We are collecting all that information. So we don't have a solid number that we're willing to talk about right now. We do know that it is a lot because we also were getting a lot of fake calls. This is a worldwide discussion, and we're dealing with scammers. Victims' families are being reached out to saying that they have their kids pay me money. It's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. We're dealing with with mental health issues where people are calling saying they have visions. All of these things we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and we're having to vet this information, and it becomes very taxing on our people. Again, this is an extremely heartbreaking, this is, if not the worst, one of the worst, disasters in this region in a very, very long time.
That did not have to happen.
And so we're
Best estimate, like dozens or hundreds, just to give people an idea.
a lot. So, yeah, let me.
Yeah,
Not to get into the weeds on that, people are asking lots of questions, and what version of the investigation happened?
to the best of my knowledge, there is zero evidence of anything related to anything like weather modification. And look, the internet can be a strange place. People can come up with all sorts of crazy theories. What I know is a reality is that a whole lot of Texans are grieving right now. I will tell you, I was visiting with one parent who was talking about online, being harassed online because their information was public, that they had a little girl who was missing at Mystic. And look, there are a lot of people who are messed up, and my call for everyone, there's a time to have political fights, there's a time to disagree. This is not that time. This is a time just to...
Yeah, because it happened on your watch.
Reach out, support each other, go volunteer at the Salvation Army.
You didn't see that when what was going on in California was going on.
You know what I did when this happened? Just go hug your kids. Because I gotta tell you, I hugged my girls with tears in my eyes. Because every one of us who's a parent, there but for the grace of God go I. And nothing will fill the void in these moms and dads' hearts. But
God is going to judge you harshly.
and every one of us, we have an obligation to
You better enjoy this earthly
and help
life.
them make it through. And look, Texas will come through. And let me say, Kirk County, the Hill Country is incredible. It is beautiful. And these summer camps, Camp Mystic is an
He's
incredible
going to judge you
Texas institution.
and all of those who are like you.
It has made
very,
a
very
profound
harshly.
difference helping
So I
young
hope it's worth
girls become strong women
Whatever it is
in
that you're getting
Texas
out of
and
this.
across the country. And so, for me at least, I'm praying for these camps. I'm praying for all the campers, everyone implicated.
But to the
everyone
families
impacted.
and the friends of those
I
people
hope we come together and stand as one.
here in my state of Texas, my brothers and sisters, my heart goes out to you.
Okay,
My
we were
prayers
just
go out to
listening to a
you.
press conference involving
And-
local
and-
officials
and-
there in
and I
Kerrville,
pray
Texas.
that
This is
God
Kirk
will give you the
County, which
strength,
saw the worst of this horrific
and the
flooding
courage to be able to
tragedy,
get
and
through
from the
this.
sheriff
Because
confirming
we
that
are
the death
Texans.
toll is still climbing,
And we as Texans do
confirming
stand
48
behind
adults
you.
and
And
27
may God
children
continue to
were
bless
killed
you
in this
and to
flood
keep you
event. Just in
throughout
Kirk
this
County,
process.
with 10 children and 1 counselor still missing from Camp Mystic, which we've all heard and talked so much about.